It's today in EVE Online, April 7th, 2020. It's Patch Notes Day. So we're going to have a bunch of friends talk to us about what's in these patch notes. Apparently there's a lot of action. Let's check it out. I want to say hi to some of the key guys that'll be talking here. How's it going, Billy?
Good afternoon, Madrell. How you doing?
Very good. And here we have, I'll just rip through these real quick. Fonsway, Arya. Ooh, Elise is here. Jurius, Doctor, and Spod. There's some familiar names, and there's other guys in here too. I'm sure more will pile in as we start talking about the patch notes. Let's go through these things and see what some of the highlights are. But before we do that, let me just ask Billy, what's the biggest thing in here?
Um, super. The resist one is the biggest by far.
Elise, are you there?
Yeah, I think I agree with Billy. I think the resist one is massive.
This is lower resists for supers.
A
Oh,
lower resist for everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Let's actually go through these. Fonsway, if you can do our narrating.
Sure, I can read us off patch notes if you want.
Sure, for the audio listeners.
Sure, let's pull that up. All right, starting at the top. Surgical Strike, coming 15th of April. Oh, this is an interesting intro. I missed the salutation. Resilient Capsuleers. The quest for a healthy capital ecosystem continues with a massive update to capital survivability, resistance modules, and more in the Surgical Strike update coming this April. As outlined in the recent Ecosystem Outlook blog, bold changes are being made across EVE in the search for diversity and new exciting options for pilots. Surgical Strike will bring capital survivability more in line with the rest of New Eden, reducing the overwhelming power of logistics, make adjustments to some long-standing powerhouses in the subcapital meta, and begin to establish more payoff for getting up close and personal with your enemies. Let's get into it. Resistance modules is the first section talked about here. The biggest change coming in this update is a 20% reduction in the power of all modules that increase shield or armor resistances. That means energized plating, armor coating, armor hardeners, shield hardeners, and shield resistance amps. This will lead to a drop across the board in effective hit points, but the more slots a ship has devoted to resists, the more important the change becomes. There is excitement here about this approach because not only does it lower capital survivability, it also diminishes the overall power of logistics and will make modules focused on speed and damage a more attractive option. The hope is to see bloodier fights, less stalemates, and a huge cross sectional shift in the fitting meta. This kind of shakeup rewards those that adapt quickly, so get to theory crafting. Alongside this update to resistance module power, tier side for shield and armor resist modules is also underway, which you may have noticed beginning to appear on the Singularity test server. The tier side adjustments are very small in scale and much more focused on sensible naming and organization of the modules in these groups, but you can expect a 20% reduction to be applied after the stats currently in place in Singularity for modules that are affected by tier side changes. Next section, capital updates. There is a vision for a capital ecosystem with clear escalation steps based on distinct roles for each class. Part of that vision relies on moving supercarriers and titans away from all purpose damage to a specific focus on capital and structure killing. You will have seen one big step in this direction recently with the removal of high angle weapons from Titans. Now, substantial changes are being made to supercarriers as well, but there's also an acknowledgement that supercarriers need more to set them apart from Titans and Dreadnoughts as capital killers before their subcapital damage application can be fully removed. For now, their fighter tube loadout will be rearranged to promote more class diversity in your local super umbrella and decrease long range heavy fighter damage application. Capital changes in this update include specifically removal of support fighter tubes for supercarriers with the addition of one extra heavy fighter tube. Bonuses to XL plates and extenders for supercarriers reduced to 200% and for Titans reduced to 300%. Long range heavy fighter explosion radius is increased by 50%. This is a reduction in application of long range heavy fighters. Short range heavy fighter speed increased by 50%. Fighter bay size increased for Aeon and Wyvern. Capital capacitor boosters are limited to 1 per ship. Sub-capital updates. Fleet diversity and an evolving meta are things that are always encouraged. And in that interest, there is a small package of sub-capital updates coming as well. The resist module power reduction will naturally favor Tech 2 hulls slightly, and as these ships already dominate the fleet meta, battleships will be given an upgrade to keep them competitive while adjusting critical bonuses for ships like the Munin, Loki, and Eagle. All Tech 1 battleships, which includes faction hulls, receive 10% increase to base hit points and 30% increase to scan resolution, which will improve their lock time. Munin bonuses to damage and optimal range are being reduced to 5% per level. I believe the current amount is 7.5%. Eagle max velocity reduced to 190 and power grid reduced to 950. Loki offensive subsystem bonuses to the projectile optimal range, fall off, and tracking are reduced to 5% per level, and the Loki power grid has been reduced to 550. Legion power grid has been reduced to 625. Deimos has received buffs and is receiving a bonus to hybrid damage from the heavy assault cruiser skill, which will now be 7.5% per level. The power grid is being increased to 1,100 and CPU is being increased to 380. Additionally, damage from bombs will be reduced by 20% to roughly match the loss in effective hit points associated with the resist module change. Bomb hit points will also be reduced by 20%. Final section, Brawler's Paradise. Over the years, as fleet commanders and elite PvPers across New Eden have refined their skills, it has become more and more difficult to capitalize on the supposed benefits of short-range ships. Gone are the days of blaster slugfests on low-sec gates between plated Megathrons and Armageddons. While a return to such primitive times is not expected, there is desire to begin exploring new rewards and tools for those brave pilots who are willing to get up close and personal. As a first step in this direction, there will be an increase to the damage of all close-range Tech 2 ammo, excluding exotic plasma, which is the ammunition used for entropic disintegrators fitted to Triglavian ships, by 15%. This means Conflagration, Hail, Rage, and of course Void will all be packing an extra punch. The Surgical Strike update will be live on the test server very soon, so keep your eyes on EVE social media platforms for that announcement. Its deployment to Tranquility is expected on the 15th of April. This is a big step towards our long-term capital vision. We have also planned further updates later in the year to continue the journey towards a vibrant EVE ecosystem. Until then, fly safe.
All right. So the first thing is this is expected on the 15th of April.
1 week.
All right. So next week, the patch will actually hit. This looks like it's more of a dev blog. Whew, let's discuss.
I mean, where to start?
Y'all go first. I go last.
I'll clean up.
So essentially, what it means is if you have energized adaptive, let's just go with armor for right now. If you have an energized adaptive nanomembrane, to get the same resists in a week, you're going to need Imperial Navy or one of those faction ones. If you have an Imperial Navy, you're going to have to go up to a C-type and so on and so forth.
It's actually a little deeper than that, right? So 20% on a Tech 2 Energized Adaptive is their base 20%, and an Imperial Navy is 22.5. So that would become like 16 and I don't know, like 17 or something like that. So
Okay, yeah, you're right. I for some reason I thought the difference was a little bit bigger between the two. So yeah, like resistances across the board are getting cut down pretty significantly.
Yeah.
Which
But
means
it's not just the resistances. You're also getting a reduction in the XP bonuses from the plates and extenders as well.
But yeah, for subcaps though, we're like just general normal subcap fights, like there is like everyone's resists are going to be markedly lower, which means obviously like taking more damage becomes more alluring, right? As a fleet commander, I'm sure Vili's like chomping at the bits here because he gets to come up with fleets and he doesn't have to be hamstrung by saying, oh, I have to tank blah blah blah. Now, no one's going to be able to tank everything, right? And if you go to a dynamic where you try and bring just more logistics, the people that bring more damage are going to have a better time.
More things will die. That was the whole thing of this patch.
That's Sword Dragon joined us. Let me turn him up. Say that again, Sword.
More things will die. That was the most important thing of this patch.
Yeah, I mean, they said the word brawler at the end there, and that's all I could think of when I was looking at this. Brawls, which used to be the old word for a good old slug match, usually among battleships.
Well, people are going to have to look for more ways of damage mitigation if they want to keep their fleet alive, rather than just tanking their ship up and making sure they have as much as enough logistics. So we may even end up seeing things like the succubus becoming viable in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, we're also joined by Arya Cable, Fonsway, who just did reading, Julius Doctor. You guys have any thoughts on this? We'll go with Fonsway last.
I mean,
Hallelujah.
yeah, I was going to say, I think the fact that they have clearly stated that they're going to take away the subcapital impact of supercarriers, and that supercarriers are really strongly being aimed towards being an anti-capital weapon, is an anti-super weapon essentially is fantastic. I think that really opens up things and it creates some big holes in the steamroller.
Go ahead, guys. Anyone?
I will say there's one little hidden perk in here that if you're a mission runner, you should be a little bit more cautious on the 15th, because suicide ganking becomes quite a bit easier because your resists are much lower. So just keep your eyes out there if you're a suicide. If you're flying your like blinged out rattlesnake or something.
And T2 catalysts do 750 DPS. He did.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
In the small gang community, we're very excited to hear about the changes to the capital cap boosters now that you can only have one per ship rather than 3 or 2 or however many, because before it would become practically impossible to kill the fax if you have small numbers, particularly less than 20 people, and you'd have to bring multiple Balgorns, curses and such. Now with all these ships only having one capital shield booster, it's certainly going to be a lot less mind-numbing to have an hour plus of bashing a fax, or taking such a long time to fight a Rorqual and having to have something like a Balgorn on grid just to have even any chance of doing anything.
On that note, as somebody who flies a Lif, having a dual cap booster Lif, I mean, like, sure, bring your waves of focus void bombs. I've got loads of boosters for this. Now that's not so much something I can.
All right, let's hear
Yeah,
from
I think-
Fonsway before he gets buried. What are your top thoughts?
So obviously, I have little or nothing to add in terms of the impact on the nullsec meta, because that is not a part of the game that I'm personally involved in. Although obviously I understand it from the overall perspective, and I'm very happy that you guys are happy. I look at the game in a mechanical sense. Pyfa is my other ship. I see people solving problem, well, not solving problem. I see people avoiding problems with ISK. I see people avoiding problems with Bling. I see people ignoring mechanics and not learning them. Rat mechanics, ship mechanics, etc. And this is going to change that. The overall tone of most of the changes that we have seen going into the game for the past year or more have been the rewarding of mastery and knowledge. And not being able to sidestep or simply avoid problems with just more stuff. So I'm obviously very happy about this. That is one particular, outlook on this. Another is that there are a lot of solved scenarios that exist right now. There's a lot of content that has been in the game for an extremely long time. Incursions have been in for a long time. Missions have been in for a long time. All this stuff has been in for a very, very, very long time. And these are all solved. These builds were made, and they don't really get reviewed. Maybe there were better ways to do it. Maybe there weren't. Maybe the ways that we were doing it were sidestepping problems. So now this is all green fields. All the content that was designed has now been revitalized, and we all have an opportunity to examine it once again and view it from a more critical perspective that rewards more mastery and understanding. So I, for one, am extremely excited about these changes. I feel that it had become stagnant, and now the easy bake ISK oven is being shut off.
What I'm seeing in chat is a lot of people saying, good luck finding things to kill. What do they mean by that?
I think it
Yes,
means that people aren't willing to risk their big assets, and that this is just going to make them more resistant to undock.
Arya, your take?
Yes, I think these changes are. We knew capital changes were coming. We knew Munin changes were coming. We've been screaming nerf to Munin, and CCP said, "Yeah, we're looking at it." But I don't think anyone really anticipated the scope of these changes. The resistance change, sure, it reduces HP on capitals, but also the subcaps. Some of these other changes they sound really great, but I think they're just surprising that there's so many changes hitting that capital meta. I think in terms of whenever you make your ship weaker and make it more apt to die, there's always going to be those players that are saying, "Wow, I'm going to be a little more risk adverse now because I don't know how fast I'm going to die," and that's always going to happen. But hopefully, these changes promote others to say, "Let's go out and fight because maybe I'll get some kills." Where in the past it was harder for me to get a kill because the impact to logi or skills or something with the ships where they think, okay, I can't kill someone before I die. I'm doing more damage. They have less HP. Maybe I'll get myself a kill.
Right.
I wonder if outside of Delve you'll see people ratting with supers anymore.
That was a concern of CCP. That was a concern of CCPs at the time. They are addressing it. They know that everyone wants supers out and about to be killed. But they realized that it was these kind of changes were needed and not to hamstrung themselves by relying on one particular thing being killed off.
So they knew this was going to upset people, but they're going forward anyway. Is that what you mean?
Every change makes people sad. I'm saying that with regards to supers, they knew that it would affect them, as in affect the ability to rat.
Well, super shouldn't be ratting ships anyway. I mean, well, we can say what things are supposed to be and not supposed to be, but I remember a time when if you were ratting in a dreadnought, you were like a crazy man.
There was probably a time when if you were ratting in a battleship, you were a crazy man. But that's the beauty of a sandbox game is it evolves, and things that were initially destined to be one thing ends up being used for another thing.
Yeah. Hi, Carneros.
Hi. If supercarriers can't apply to rats anymore, then there's no incentive to use them for ratting. Obviously, because you can't make ISK with it. You'd make more ISK with a subcap ship, which means you won't see as many supercarriers in space, which means the hunters will switch to a different kind of prey. But, they can go for carriers and, whatever the next thing down is, in the same way that miners and ratters and stuff in nullsec can just get used to less income and everything is, just try to perceive more value in a battleship than you used to have before, for example, and go for those targets. I think that's what they're hoping to do.
Another side of that, though, is that you do get people who take avatars to Rock Havens and just, AoE them until they get their tick and warp out.
Well, that was something that was done prior to the changes to the application of certain doomsdays. Since that change, it hasn't really been a viable thing for Titans to do. So it's one of those things that these changes to move Titans and Supers away from dealing damage to subcap sized ships, like Chimera says, basically negate, like basically removes the desire for anybody to use them in ratting, and therefore it also reduces their the effective amount of time that they're out in a situation where they're viable to be either caught or killed. Like, I mean, obviously there's always that argument to be made that a super or a titan has enough EHP to be able to last, to be able to be saved, but that
So I
save
will say,
doesn't automatically occur. It has to require, people ready to save it.
there were a lot of discussions at the summit about that these changes were needed, but removing them from being able to be killed is something that will happen. But obviously, they know that these things dying is good for them. And there was a lot of advocacy from a lot of different people that should stay, but to not hamper changes because it'll remove them from the from running. Otherwise, we'd be stuck.
And I have not seen a Titan ratting in months. I'd be surprised if anyone in this room has seen a Titan in the last month hitting a Rockhaven.
And that's the other side to it with these changes, because we want these things maybe to die faster. And I think that's good. But if there's less incentive to actually undock them, will they really die faster? And I know if Carneros, you hear this, I hear this in my alliances. I spent this time getting my supers and Titans, and now that I have these Titans, I don't have a reason to use them every day. And sure, riding with Titans was producing a lot of ISK. I get it. But now those Titans are docked. They're not on the field. And there has to be at some point something that incentivizes people to take out these ships, put them on the field, and put risk behind them. And the risk is, I think that's the other side of it. We see the brawling part of this dev blog saying, we're going to buff brawling, try to bring it back. But the other side of that is I see people thinking, this enemy could do more damage. I have less EHP. I'm going to go more into a kitey doctrine than a brawling doctrine because I won't lose my ships that way.
Well, let me pose a different question. One of the things that we keep hearing is like, if you make things too easy to kill, nobody's going to do the PvE stuff that makes them targets. But we're thinking about it as if your PvE activities, your workload in the game is supposed to put you in the path of PvP all the time. I guess it is. But we're not really talking about PvPers running into each other and fighting each other. They're both prepared to PvP. So I'm wondering if this is one of the problems because of whaling and because of other activities that are kind of high profile, that people think that this is really a fight between the people who go out and try to do their work day in EVE and the people who are out hunting them. Like, if that's the only relationship they see. Because we saw in Blackout, the big deal was that people were all looking for ratters that were sitting there unsuspecting, and they ended up running into each other and fighting each other. And basically the hunters were all running into each other. I'm going to throw it back to Elise since we have him in here. Elise, and because Carneros and Araya, both of us have talked about this before. If there's no incentive for medium-sized or smaller alliances in nullsec to use the thing they earned, then what are they supposed to do? Is that along the lines of what you're afraid of? Or what your guys talk about?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think maybe I'm like the odd man out here, because I don't think it's that bad that, these people spent, they came out to the Great Nullsec area and said, hey, I want to get this Super and Titan. It's my end game goal. They get it. And then they realize, and then, the ships end up getting nerfed because everyone else is getting them too. So I don't think it's that bad that they're not going to be used as much. I don't think it ruins someone's game style. I don't think it's, that awful. I remember when, I guess it's one of those things where I've experienced it. Yeah. So I've experienced it a bunch. So now other people get to experience that shared misery with me. So, I mean, it's not the worst. It does suck, right? And no one likes getting the feeling that, like, hey, I worked so hard for this one thing, and now the rug has been pulled out from underneath me, and I have this brick behind me.
But if to just interject here, but that is, I mean, the longer you spend playing Eve, the more you realize that this is something that happens to almost every aspect of Eve at some point. You go into these situations where something is, nerfed to a degree that it becomes, less viable or not viable at all. And, you end up not using that particular kind of weapon system or that particular ship or that particular kind of style of play. But eventually it all comes back around again at some point.
Yeah, so just keep it in your hangars, whatever. You'll see it happen. What I'm more excited about is how it's going to change the fleet meta completely, right? So, I think maybe I don't know who it was that was speaking. I was kind of like half listening, but they said, this patch is all about. They talk about brawlers quite a bit, but I don't think the brawlers are going to win out. It does seem to me like alpha fleets, like just that type of doctrine, and just kitey fleets are going to be the ones that are the big winners here, because alpha doctrines, the critical mass is now way lower to be able to blow a guy up.
Right.
And those ships are like, those fleets are actually very hard to do. Like, it seems easy, like, oh, you just warp in and shoot a guy and warp out. Like, no, that doesn't actually work like that. There's a lot of mistakes that can happen if an FC isn't used to running it. He can just whelp an entire fleet, an entire alpha fleet in one go.
Can you explain?
I've seen,
and that's like with the Munins. You see, okay, something's been reduced with the Munins, but on that point, at least, I may have less range in my Munin, but my enemy has 20% less resist.
I want to explain, Elise, the difference between why you said, the difference between brawling and volleying, basically.
All right, so brawling. So the patch here, and I'm sure like small, medium gangs will increase the amount they brawl a lot more. I've already started theory crafting like fun little fits, like the Brutix Navy issue and the Navy Geddon to do more damage. So it's the idea of a lot of damage over time, right? So you don't do damage in one burst; you just do sustained damage, and that when you're brawling, that damage is very high. So that's how you punch through logistics, and you punch through reps, and you punch through HP. So it's just kind of like you sit there and you chew through them. Alpha Fleet and stuff like that, which is Munins, is what we use now, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities to go back to something like Maelstroms, right? You do one volley that has a lot of damage, and then you have a lot of downtime between shots. But with Alpha Fleets and type things like this, when everyone's resistance and EHP is much lower, you can just kill them really, really quickly. And your critical mass is the key thing here, right? So let's say right now you need 50 Munins to chew through, or to alpha or two-shot an opposing ship. As soon as you get under 50 Munins, your fleet comp can't really do too much. It's got to either hope someone's bad, which obviously happens in Eve, or it's got to leave. Now that critical mass gets reduced way lower, roughly 20% lower. So instead of needing 50 ships, you can lose more ships and still be able to take out some enemies with you. So you can stay on field until you have 45 ships or 44 ships instead of 50. So if you go in there with 80 ships, you can lose a handful more ships and still be effective on the field.
If I may, I want to pull Ash's comment out of chat. And he said, he said in 3 words that I'm going to say in a lot more. He said, "Adapt or die."
Uh-oh.
And what that means, to me, maybe it means something different to him, but what it means to me is that we all wake up to the same EVE Online client as each other every day. And it doesn't matter what's happening in there. It matters that all you got to do is figure out how to be better at it than the other guy, and then you win that day.
I feel that's a good general comment for all things Eve.
Another thing that I think this might do is we might see, with an emphasis on brawling and being up close and high, the availability of high volley attacks to overcome the reduced resists of those ships, we're going to start seeing some older comps start coming back, like blaster faceboat cormorant fleets. Just get high numbers of people out there in cheap blaster ships, being able to do a lot more damage now.
So I think McLeod wanted to get in here, but I'll just ask this.
Especially in low sec.
I didn't think McLeod wanted to get in here, but I'll just ask this in general. So, are there winners and losers here in this this next patch? I'll just throw that.
I mean, there definitely is, but like, I don't think you can squarely say this is the like this group or this playstyle is the winner and this playstyle is the loser. Like, there's a lot of give and take in these changes.
I think
it's a net.
Arya or Carneros, yeah.
I think it's a net nerf to Upwell structures, because they're going to, because super carriers and presumably more of the dreadnoughts and super caps in general should be able to apply more damage. Well, they still have their timer, but you should be able to reinforce an Upwell structure with fewer ships on the grid coming up here. I don't know. My experts haven't said anything yet. This is just me, a politician, I guess, analyzing.
Not awake yet.
I think this is a good first step. We know there's going to be other changes coming. I think those other changes are going to really impact the changes we see in this dev blog.
Yeah, I think in terms of alliances that exist in nullsec now and in other groups, like I'm sure wormhole groups and even lowsec groups, they're perfectly suited to adapting to these changes. I don't think there's going to be one group that's like, huh, how do I deal with Alpha Strike or like stuff like that. I think people are going to understand that, hey, this is how the meta is shifting. We're going to explore a few things that might be interesting. Like rogues might be flavor of the month for a little while. Abaddons might be flavor of the month for a little while, because those ships get a resistance bonus that isn't getting nerfed, right? So an Abaddon, a Rogue, and a Rattlesnake, they'll get a buff for the battleship level to resistances, and that's not changed. So the resist that you get on your ship is going to be comparatively much, much stronger than the one you're getting right now. So maybe those ships will be flavor of the month for a little bit. But I don't think anyone's going to be like left out in the cold wondering what to do, and they're going to die because these changes happen.
In the small gang community, we're quite excited for the changes. We're very happy to hear about the Loki nerf, though the Legion nerf is a bit more puzzling to us. We've all talked about how the Loki is considered incredibly oppressive and has too much tank, too much damage, too much projection with its webs, and we're glad to see that the Loki is a lot weaker. The Legion nerf came to a bit of a surprise to us. We're not too sure about the Legion one, but we are also very happy to hear that, well, there's just been a lot of changes that would change up the gameplay. We're planning on bringing out Hecates and the old Enyo and going out on a roam with those due to the changes in additional damage to blasters.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's up with the Legion nerf? Like that seems to come out of left field. I only know like one or two groups that even use legions. Is that something that maybe wormholers use?
Wormholes use a lot of T3Cs. They're incredibly strong ships. You can bring a lot of them through a wormhole. The Loki is really popular with the wormhole groups. It's very strong, very versatile, very oppressive. The Legion one is a bit of a surprise to us. It's always seen as second rate compared to the Loki, and we're not too sure why the Legion was caught in the nerf as well. Maybe it's because it will be the second Loki, but we're not too sure about it.
I mean, there has been numerous instances where legions have been used in a very kind of small gang kind of way that has an extremely heavy tank alongside afterburner damage mitigation as well. It could be the case that that extreme level of tank was something that CCP might wanted to nerf back into a degree of like just being able to be dealt with properly.
I mean, it's
decent
a
So
way.
the
it's a
Legion
pretty big
nerf,
nerf.
the Legion nerf is a power grid nerf specifically.
Yeah.
So it's a fitting nerf. They're not changing what it does. They're just changing what they're forcing you to choose what you are able to put on it.
Yeah, like either
Yeah,
more
so what's the
tank or more
scenario?
damage.
So
Yeah, so what's the scenario
Zero
where this is
Gravitas
overpowered?
Banksy. Well, Zero Gravitas Banksy in chat says you can now fit beams or a plate, but not both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but were
Whereas
beam plated legions really oppressive? Like,
No, they
I mean,
weren't.
They weren't, because they weren't really being used by many people. But like in the situations where they were being used, they were a tough nut to crack. Because like not only were they beamed with beams and heavy tank kind of thing, they were also for the most part like afterburn as well. So they did damage mitigate as well.
So that could be it. After nerfing the Loki, they don't want people just to adopt this Legion platform.
I would encourage the panel to think about the missile sides of Legion.
The problem with the Loki that a lot of us hated for how oppressive it was because it had an incredible shield buffer. It was really tanky. It could, out-tank battleships, and at the same time, it could web out at 80 kilometers and also apply quite good damage with either artillery, or it could track incredibly well with autocannons. It was just something that there wasn't a lot of answers to in terms of dealing with a Loki on grid, unless you were to, overwhelm it. It would web you down. It had good tracking. It had good damage, and it had quite a lot of buffer that you had to chew through.
It's possible that the Legion nerf is a preemptive strike because of the Loki. They didn't want they perhaps saw a specific scenario in which the Legion was the thing that people ran to, and they're closing off that path before people do it. This is just the thing that occurs to me. I don't know if it's actually what it is.
Oh, Billy dropped a little like bread trail crumb that I assume points towards the Ham Legion. Like, are people actually worried about the Ham Legion becoming incredibly dominant?
We haven't.
I don't think the Ham. Maybe the Heavy Missile Legion.
Rapid Light Legion, no. The thing with the legions is if it's using lasers, and you break its cap, it can't use its lasers. With the Loki, if you break its cap, it's still shooting at you. I guess with the Rapid Light or Heavy Missile Legion, that solves the being capped out issue. But the biggest problem with the Loki was the fact that it could web and it could projectile that far. The Legion can't really do that compared to the Loki.
Well, you have to also understand that, with all of these changes coming, there's also a damage increase to things like rage missiles and stuff. So, obviously, take that into account as well. And you could understand that, something like a Heavy Missile Legion might actually be a very viable thing after the patch. But, having that reduction in the power grid may reduce the capacity of those being so seriously dominant because of having both, the incredible amount of DPS and with say for heavy missiles, a decent amount of alpha as well, but also have a ridiculous tank.
But overall, the small gang community, we're very excited to hear the changes. We're already looking at the demos, and we can see it can output an incredible amount of damage now. The Eagle, however, I believe that's been nerfed as well.
I was looking at the legal actually, because I was there thinking to myself, the change to the Eagle may just be mitigated by having a little bit less DPS, and you'll still have the same amount of tank.
I mean, the Eagle's a ship that.
Sorry, go for it.
The Eagle's a ship that also has a built-in resist bonus, which is even stronger now, right? It gets that 20% resists profile.
Yeah, because that doesn't get touched by the reduction.
With the resist, we think the Malediction is going to be might overtake the Stiletto in terms of tackle ship because of the Malediction's resistance bonuses. It's going to be incredibly powerful for an interceptor now. The battleship changes. Well, yeah.
Its armor resists?
Sorry, the bonus resists on the armor the Malediction has.
Okay.
Also, I'm sorry. I'm gonna focus on one thing. The Eagle got nerfed less than the Legion got nerfed. That cracks me up. I'm losing it. But there must be something that I'm missing, right?
We're glad to hear about the battleship buff because the scan resolution, with the amount of time it takes to lock up subcaps in a battleship, it just made it impossible to work with. But now it's got the increased health, it's got better scan resolution, it can lock things up faster. We're not sure if we're going to see ourselves field battleships because of how immobile they are, but with something like the Nightmare, it's certainly going to be a lot more useful, a lot better. Since the
I think
battleship buffs also include, I believe it includes faction and pirate hulls.
It does.
I think we need to appreciate CCP trying to make the Demos relevant.
I did find that interesting that the Demos was in there.
That feels like I'm sure this is not the case, right? But I know CCP Rise really likes the Demos. In my like headcanon of how CCP works, he's just like going over there and he just puts a little post-it note on the desk and like, yo, buff that.
And the last time it was flown was when CCP Rise was a player.
That's Galente armor hack.
Yeah, it's actually a super good ship for like this incredibly niche role. But now it just does a lot more damage.
It didn't get wide use though. It's almost like a tournament ship, maybe,
or a camping ship.
Well, now maybe it has other uses. So, are the theory crafters going to go crazy with this, or does it look pretty clear with these changes which direction to go?
Oh, the theory crafters are going to lose their fucking minds.
I think you're going to see a lot more experimentation with some afterburner sort of damage mitigation tactics in small gangs.
The buff to rage missiles is going to make the heavy assault missile Cerberus a lot more powerful. We know that for sure. We're already running calculations on that right
now. The heavy assault missile Cerberus.
Ham Cerb, yes.
But it's a real thing, Billy. It's I've seen it.
Yeah, no. Like I was like, what? Who is talking? And I'm like, oh, it's like the small gang dude. Yeah, sure. You guys can do it.
I think if Billy was a T-Rex, he's running after Rich.
It's okay, Billy. You can log on to your spy ult and join us.
Yeah.
Sorry, we want views from nullsec, but lowsec and wormholes as well. See how these changes affect you guys.
No, I think Billy is absolutely right. The theory crafters are going to go nuts because someone's going to say, "Oh, it's obvious, Alpha wins," and then someone's going to say, "No, it's obvious, Rogues are the best," and then someone's going to be like, "No, it's obvious, Nightmares are better because you can mitigate damage," and then they're going to try these out. They're going to argue on the forums. I don't know if other alliances have this, but the Pandemic Legion Tactics forum, if you go in there and you're like, you better be able to. When you come up with a fleet comp, you better be able to defend it because like a swarm of locusts will descend upon you to try and pick it apart.
Yeah, it's
that sounds like our theory sessions.
Somebody mentioned, and I believe, Villy, did you confirm that the bonuses to the short range ammo, the brawling ammo, also applies to extra large? So this would mean dread bombs are deadlier than ever.
Correct.
Yep.
Have they given
Revelations are going to...
Have they given any thought about buffing the Hicks so that, I don't know, they feel like they have no role right now? Everybody brings sabers.
Well, nice. I think subcap v capital, you're going to see Hicks, and like the Ikatursa was already a significant threat to capital ships. Now it's just so much more so.
And mostly the survivability of the Hick is pretty bad.
You're stuck in a time loop. You're going a little slow.
So
come out of warp and then talk again. Go ahead, Billy.
The Hick is already plenty tanky, and it's got a role as the low sec, like only way to tackle things. But yeah, there's definitely some issues with the Hick's role. I would agree.
Someone mentioned Ikatursa's. If you look at the dev blog, it calls out the Tech 2 ammo close range, but does not mention Triglavians. So it'd be interesting.
No, it does. It says
the ramp up
excluded. It says it's excluded. Disintegrators are not being buffed.
Occult does not need any more fucking damage.
Contrary to popular belief, we found the Icky Tursa to be underwhelming in small gang. It's just simply doesn't compare to the other Triglavian ships, and we believe that other ships in the Icky Tursa's position do it far better and far more effectively. They're more mobile, they're more capable than the Icky Tursa. We think Icky Tursa's a bit lacking.
Do you think they need like a speed buff, or is there some like how would you change that?
We think there needs to be a speed buff, application buff, like the ramp up buff. The damage it gets from ramping up just doesn't compare to the other.
Yeah, it takes too long. It's a 30 cycle ramp up to get to full damage.
Takes too long and isn't agile enough, and yeah, it's just lackluster.
I want to change direction just a second. Do any of you guys run Abyssal Dead Space sites by any chance?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's gonna get like super wild, right? Like,
So
this was a segue to you.
Yeah.
Oh well, in that case, yes, I have been very, very frustrated by a lot of the ships that I see brought into high tier Abyss, tier 4 and tier 5. I feel that people are irresponsible with it. They throw a lot of ISK and a lot of bling at it, and they usually come out okay, sometimes not. And when they don't, they just blame the Abyss instead of their skills and ability and understanding. And my first reaction when I saw this is that, oh my God, high-end content is actually high-end content now. You can't just throw a bunch of stuff at it and expect to win. Z-Kill is going to be fat with the flesh of Helas in a week.
Colorful.
I'm very happy that mastery is being rewarded now, as opposed to just throw ISK at the problem. You have to be good, you have to know what you're doing. The top end of your ability to survive has been reduced, and you're going to have to fill it in now with more understanding of the rats, more understanding of the sites, more understanding of your ships, the mechanics overall. Practice your piloting. People jump into Abyss and skip the learning. They skip the training. They go straight to a Gila. They throw a whole bunch of regen on it and expect it to win, and it usually does. And they never actually learn. And now the plan that I and others have been suggesting to players for quite some time is get 10 Kestrels and 10 Punishers worth 2 million ISK apiece. And don't stop until they're all dead in tier 1. And then when those are done, you have learned all of the things that kill those ships. You've learned a lot of the mechanics and a lot of the dangers. And then you upgrade, and then you get a Caracal, and then those are worth 20 million ISK, and then you whelp 5 of those. And you move up slowly until you get to the ships that you really don't want to whelp. And then you start trying to actually survive. But this progression of learning and training and building up your muscle memory and doing your drills and figuring stuff out is the way that you succeed. And just throwing a bunch of regen on it is no longer going to be a valid solution.
Anyone else run Abyssal Space often?
I do a little bit. I run a Sacrilege, which is I kind of feel called out because I just make it kind of mindless. It's not like super mindless. The Sacrilege has this problem where if you don't do enough damage to the right targets, you'll die because of the timer, because the overall DPS is pretty.
Yeah, I've got a like tier 5 Abyssal Gila that's like Abyssal modded and a high grade crystal set, so I can just like turn off my brain and do them. I'm pretty confident I'll still be able to do them with it, just because it's like so overtuned, but like I'll have to like significantly pay attention.
I also run in a SAC, but I mostly run the sites to get the mats to build additional ships, and for me it's all about farming the mats.
A few of the guys in our community that run Abyssal sites, they've been wanting to be able to do the PvP arena with 3 frigates. They think, 3 assault frigate combat would be quite interesting in the Abyssal sites, and they're sad to see that this hasn't been added.
Right. Somebody asked me why they're nerfing the Loki.
Well, because it's the dominant one, right? It's become basically the dominant T3, and typically when something becomes the dominant of a particular class, it's looked at as a nerf to bring it more in line with the rest of its kin.
Yeah, generally when something.
Okay, the Loki is incredibly strong because it's got you can fit a lot of buffer to it. You can fit webs that go out incredibly long range, up to easily 60k and even 80k if you have the right setup, and 100k if you're really crazy. If you news it out, it can still apply with either its autocannons, which have really good tracking, or its artillery, which is really good at alpha. And also, it can cloak up. So, in the middle of a fight, a cloaky Loki uncloaks, webs you, and you're dead. It's just so oppressive to deal with, and it's got a lot of buffer that you have to chew through to bring it down.
Yeah. Fast, cap stable, heavy missile Lokis are just gross.
And they'll just log off. Like they'll either just cloak up and then log off in system, and you just won't be able to catch. Like, you'll never kill them. They can just disengage, and you're like, okay.
Catching it is next to impossible. Think of a Hugin, but tankier, and deals more damage.
And the thing is, if you know how to fit them too, and you're a good theory crafter, I mean, I've been in fights where we showed up with Lokis, enemy brought Lokis, and our Lokis beat them. It's all about who's running the fleet and who's theory crafting it, because there's things you can do with Lokis you couldn't do with other fleets. So this nerf, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Can I try? So Varag in chat is very upset, and I want to try to make him feel better about this because he's a good dude. No, I want to try to make him feel better about this. So he feels that the new players are going to have a harder time, and they're going to quit because of this. We have encountered, by we I mean myself, Ash, the Convocation of Empyreans, the organization that we're running. We have encountered a lot of new players recently who come in without preconceived notions about how hard or easy things are supposed to be. And we hand them their 10 Kestrels and their 10 Punishers that are worth 2 million ISK apiece. And they have zero value to those people. We hand it to them for free, and we say, go blow these up and come back to us when they're gone. And dying is good. And like you play in any other MMO, and dying is like, okay, you just respawn and try again. So when we hand someone 20 ships, what we've created is a situation where, go respawn and try again. We don't put emotional value on the loss, or rather we put positive emotional value on the loss. It's like, you see what got you that time? That's what got you. Now you know. And they don't care that they lost their 2 million ISK ship, and we don't care that we had to pay for it. We try to desensitize people to the losses. We try to teach them that the point of Eve is not to be rich, but to be good. And the rich kind of just happens if you're good. I believe that this is a step in that direction, because these players aren't coming in expecting anything. They only expect what you tell them. So if we don't tell them that it's supposed to be easy, then they're not going to think it's supposed to be easy.
Well, I'd like to tell Varag something. I started Eve in August. So I'm one of the newest players here. I started last year, and I can tell you that this affects the old players a lot more, because all of their expensive ships, the ones that they spend billions on, the ones that they spend months to train into, they have fewer and fewer uses now. The newer players who can get into the smaller ships faster are going to have a lot more fun. They're going to have a lot more use for it.
Is that a rooster that I hear back there?
That is foul.
That's okay. Sorry to interrupt you. I couldn't make it. Go ahead.
One of the things I learned is something as cheap as 100 million, or 2 ships worth a total of about 20 million, can easily shut down a 20 billion supercarrier. And with these recent changes to the supercarriers, they're going to be even less and less useful, except for cap fights. So to say this affects new players a lot more, I don't think so. I think the new players are going to be able to have a lot more fun loading short-range ammo and getting into brawls and doing a lot of more damage now.
Eve is always more fun when something blows up. Ideally, you want it to be the other guy, but even if you blow up, it's not like the worst thing in the world. It's kind of an experience, right?
It wasn't fun to lose my space in Veil of the Silent, though, and start all over again.
But you've created something much better and much bigger.
I don't know if you keep making it hard on the mid-tier alliances. They're pretty big, but also not huge. They're gonna create diplomatic relations to keep themselves safe. Like, isn't this a recipe of growing if you can't live independently?
I think that might not be quite the feel when you figure that EVE really is all about the groups, the friends you're playing with, the new friends you make. That's the strength of EVE, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I love to say, and I've probably said this on this channel before, EVE is not a game. A game is something that you pick up, master, and put down, and then you're done with it. This is a community hobby where you get together and you make friends and you meet people, and the game is just a toy that we've all collectively decided to play with because we like internet spaceship submarines.
Yeah,
that's a good way of saying it.
From our Alliance chat right now, someone's saying, I just spent all this time, I got my Titan, and now it seems like there'll be no use for it.
Oh, there's definitely going to be use for it. It's just there's not
So
going to
what
be
you said it have 2 days ago that it doesn't have in a week?
Yeah.
I think the fear will be people with the changes, they'll be less apt to actually use Titans.
But you can
I don't think so.
You can see how that sounds to other players that, hey man, you are the problem because there's 1,000 of you now. You're not unique, and when you all get together, it's a bad scene.
Well, the issue there is like what I think CCP is trying to do, and what a lot of us who kind of understand it is trying to do. Is trying to break a mentality of thinking that, a Titan or a Super is an end game situation where now I have it, I should be able to lord it over all sorts of people all the time with impunity, right? And that doesn't work in a situation where, there's people with thousands of these. Well, there's thousands of people with them. Let's put it that way.
I certainly agree that there's an issue in our capitals and supers that needs to be addressed. Certainly,
because they have to.
You're playing a video game. You have you grind. You try to achieve a certain level in the game. In a single player game, it's maybe the story. Once you're done with the story, you put the game down. You play another game. But in MMO, you have a cyclical situation where in EVE you achieve something, you then lose it, and then you strive to achieve it again. And most people who've gotten their first battle cruiser, I remember getting my first battle cruiser. I also remember losing my first battle cruiser. Same thing with a battleship. We have these cyclical sort of conditions in an MMO, and that makes sense. In some MMOs where you don't lose anything, the game company has to keep providing new content, like WoW. You get the best things in WoW, you do all the content. What does the Blizzard do? They do another release, and they give you more stuff to strive for.
Well, one of the things that we kept hearing from Ratati, either offline or during the show, which we did last Sunday, look for that podcast coming out today, was aspirational ships, and people are meant to aspire to be in these super carriers or even Titans. Like, they're not supposed to be getting there so quickly. But what happened in the last 3 or 4 years is those aspirational ships became very attainable. So it wasn't just that a person had one, they had 1, 2, or 3, or you had people who put their mind to it and put themselves in the proper situation, usually with nullsec and some of the lower pricing of the ships there, and the skill injectors allowed them to get in these ships in a lot more people got into it, and a lot more people got into those big aspirational ships in multiples for each person. So speak to that.
I think that's been the advertisement. We have these big fights. They involve supers and Titans. They get a lot of press. It may draw people to the game. We have things like skill injectors. You can pay to get into them faster, at least from the scaling side of it. I think players see that as a level of achievement.
Right. That's always been the case. That was a thing. That was a marker of achievement for sure. But
I also think that that the group that players who haven't achieved a supercarrier or a Titan yet need a different ship to aspire to, or need a reason to aspire to these. Maybe maybe they're still aspirational. I don't know yet. Maybe a different ship is being introduced. Maybe there's something that didn't get apparently buffed at all were the Marauders. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. But maybe they'll end up being the next thing everyone wants. I don't know.
The Demos.
The Demos, yeah. Well, the reason we talk about those aspirational ships is because they became attainable, but they're aspirational because they have a lot of power, and they especially have a lot of power if they're in big groups. And that seems to be where one of the problems is of the stagnation, I would think. But now that you don't have that, and this is not just the Titan or the mothership, the supercarrier, it's also the Rorqual, right? That was supposed to be the capital. If you were a miner, that was your aspirational ship. And that became a problem.
Well, there's kind of an issue to some degree, or at least a place to sort of strike, a good middle ground between an aspirational ship for people to kind of look up to get to, and having that particular ship be functional in an ecosystem, functional, in its place with the rest of EVE.
So maybe Funsui was onto something, right? So maybe the new aspirational ship isn't going to be a ship, right? It's going to be like getting good at flying ships,
right? That was actually my next thing. Yeah. That was my next question: is what is the new aspiration? Go ahead, discussion time. What's the new aspiration if it's not these ships that are getting nerfed? Because people are feeling that pain, right? Like, hey, I worked hard for this ship. You made it useless, or at least it can't be used in the way that it was being used by everybody else, and I'm too late to the party, and that kind of sucks. What do they do? I
can offer a new player's perspective on it. One of the ships I aspired to be able to ship into was actually a T3 destroyer because of the fact you had these 3 different modes. So T3s is something that was a big aspiration for me to get into. Another one would be doctrine ships. So this is one thing I quite like about some of the Null Alliances. Because they have certain doctrines, so that would be the Munin, the Eagles and such. These doctrine ships also become something that players aspire to be, because once you get into those, you can participate in those fleets. You could be one of the members pressing the F1. You can genuinely be part of it rather than being like a sideline side ship. So it'd be most likely T3's a doctrine ship and something that's fun to be in. The Cheetahs was one of the ships that I aspired to get into because I heard about its incredible 80-kilometer point range. It can damp people out and make them completely helpless and just stuck there. But it just depends on their perspective. To some players, especially if they're miners, the ship that they aspire to get into would probably be a better mining ship, a skiff or something, Mackinac.
I feel like things like flying your ship, being the best at flying your ship, those are always edge case goals. In any sport that you pick up, sure, there's people that are best in the world in that sport, but that's not the common goal. You don't play soccer because you want to be the best soccer person in the world. You play for other reasons. When you look at the majority of folks who play a certain thing. And I feel like EVE's similar. If we look back, the Drake was very popular, not because it was the biggest and the best. It was the most versatile. It was great at PvE. You could bring it to PvP. The Gila has now become that. The Gila, you see people striving for the Gila too, because the Gila is such a ship that provides you benefit in so many different areas of the game. Now we have this biggest and best ship, but there's not a lot of reason to fly it. And I think that's going to be hard for for players to adapt to. They're going to be looking for what's the next goalpost. What should I strive to do?
And on that topic, I mean, you guys may have already addressed this, and if I have, tell me so I can shut up. But they specifically mentioned that they're trying to tailor the super carriers and the capitals more for structure and super capital warfare. So they won't necessarily apply as well to subcaps, but they're going to be, that will be their specific role, kind of like they've been doing with the Workles, making them more of a, this is the buff all of the subcap minor ships.
That certainly is the case in terms of where CCP is heading. The kickback that people have been commenting on in various different things, including in chat and probably most likely Reddit and various different discords and stuff, is the fact that the ship that they were using, or various different forms of ships that they were using in order to create wealth for themselves, is now most likely not going to be viable. And although that is a kick in a kick in the pants for those particular people, like it was something that was it was something that was hinted at for a fair amount of time now.
So Going Crimson says his new aspirational ship won't be a Titan, it'll be a Blops.
That's understandable.
Blops stands for Black Ops. That's what that is. Those are battleships that can surprise attack or ambush.
Now, some people might want to know. Oh, sorry, Connors.
It's a Tech 2 battleship.
Yeah. So some people might want to may sort of be wondering why people don't just drop down to, say, carriers, for example, for for ISK making opportunities. The issue there has to do with survivability. In the in nullsec for the most part. Survivability with it is more along the lines of the amount of hit points that you have versus the amount of DPS that in general gangs tend to bring with them in nullsec. Obviously there's going to be larger gangs, there's going to be smaller gangs. You're going to have to kind of, CCP has to sort of basically make a judgment call based on what size gang is they feel should be survivable in a particular ship versus not. But at this present kind of time, carriers don't have the survivability that makes it a viable choice for ISK making in nullsec. So that's why you probably see a lot of people kind of going, well, there goes my ISK making opportunities, because they don't generally tend to see going from a super cap down to a sub cap to make money as a viable option.
All right, question from here. Crowd Critter says, can we talk about active tanked Faxes, please? And buff of focused voids.
Yeah, so one of the bigger changes to the caps that kind of gets overlooked. I mean, obviously we didn't overlook it because we saw it and we're great. But it's just a line item on the patch notes that says capital cap boosters are limited to 1 per ship, which is huge, right? So the use case is essentially with I mean, a lot of caps had similar, but the use case mostly is for faxes. You can't really nude out faxes because they'll fit 2, maybe sometimes even 3 cap boosters in there, so they can inject cap willy-nilly. Like, who cares? Like, nude me out, click button, full cap, rep everything. But now there's some counterplay there where if you nude out a fax, or if you get hit by a focus void bomb, which is going to be on an upwell structure, your ship kind of can't do anything.
Yeah, because it fundamentally changes how much your sustained tank can, how much of a sustained tank you can fit on a fax, or as people have said in chat, on a Rorqual.
So historically, whenever CCP tries to nerf logistic ships, like the actual T2 ships or the T1 cruisers, people just resort with, I'll just take a fax instead. But now they've kind of said, okay, well, if you're going to take a fax instead, A, you're going to be immobile, so that's kind of hard. But B, we're also nerfing that too. We're adding counterplay to those things as well.
I can tell you the fax and the multiple injector faxes and active tank. It's something that's become actually quite unbearable in the small gang PvP community, where a fax would warp in and we'd never be able to kill it. Well, we could technically kill it, but by the time we killed it, backup would have arrived and probably scare us off. It took about almost 2 hours for a very skilled Alliance tournament winning gang to be able to destroy 2 faxes, and they had to bring Balgorns and Curtis onto field because, well, they were double cap injectors, and they only died because they ran out of caps to inject into. So I think by nerfing it and only having one cap booster, it's certainly going to make faxes a lot weaker and a lot less unbearable to deal with.
Also, Crowd Critter here says, also, we have big numbers of Balgorns in low sec and wormhole space, together with Triglavian newts.
Yeah, that's good. So the fax in large scale is what it is, right? It cap fights, they're required. But in small scale, as Rich was saying, it feels awful if you're in a gang of like 15 people, low sec or null sec. Let's say you're roaming, and a fax drops in, you feel like you can't really do anything because it's never going to die. You can sit there and pound into it, but yeah, it's like chew through all your gajillion injectors. No.
I don't think it matters that you don't kill it. It's the fact that it's repping the battleship.
Yeah, and so once it shows up, you can't kill anything else either.
I mean, it's not killing you, so it should be able to rep itself. But possibly if they should have gone after the capital reppers, right? The remote reppers and or the target, like such that it's the repping ability is a function of the signature radius of the ship, right? So the smaller it is, the less effective it is, and so that way it's only can really be applied to capital ships and not battleships. Not, that would have been a better solution rather than, hey, your fax is going to die now.
All right, I just make warp drive and get full reps though, right? So
the best example I can have of this was when we caught a carrier drifted off structure. We got it down to 10% structure. So, 20 seconds later it was going to die. Fax warps on grid, triages, locks it up. There's nothing we can do now. There's nothing we can do. We can spend the next 30 minutes, 52 hours trying to bash the fax, but by then we'd be killed by the backup. So that entire time we just spent bashing and destroying this carrier, it was completely wasted because of one fax that was worth less than the carrier itself.
But that's where the rock, paper, scissors comes in, right? Subcaps can kill big titans. Titans can kill carriers. Carriers can kill subcaps, but you're going to have a hard time killing, if you're in a subcap, you're going to have a hard time killing the carrier class ships.
Yeah, sadly, we don't have a dread bomb ready to deal with the fax, and
that's what you would need.
Well, the thing is, you don't really need a dread bomb to deal with that kind of thing. Like, I've seen plenty of situations in, in fringe nullsec kind of areas where, a gang that has been roaming in has, had a pocket dread in a particular staging location, or potentially in a midded in space somewhere in hostile space, ready to come in and be utilized for that particular situation scenario. That does require obviously a degree of planning available, but it is something that I have seen being used and is very effective when it is utilized properly. Obviously you don't need 20 or 30 of them to be effective. You just need to call it in at the right moment.
I mean, if you get a fax dropped on you, just gotta bat phone Evan McLean, and he'll come in a dread and a hot dread and just blow them up.
Right, there should be an escalation path to that, right? Like, I mean, you can't have, if they're gonna give subcaps, they're gonna say subcaps should be able to take down a Titan because they can't hit you, or a super won't be able to apply damage, so you can just burn it to death. And they escalate down some path. Say drop faxes, well, you just drop dreads. You drop your super carrier on their facts to kill it, then you bring more freaking subcaps. But you can't have this thing where the subcap can kill both the carriers and the supers, right? Because they can't apply damage to you.
I just want to try to frame this from a top-down view a little bit. I see that a lot of people are really upset right now, which is to be expected because things change, and these changes, especially like this that comes from Talos, are not really announced. We do not get a lot of time. They're rapid fire changes and they just happen. But I am betting on Eve, and I am betting on CCP. I believe in the devs, I believe in the game, I believe in the player base as a whole, and I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I love this game, I love this community, and I believe very strongly that enough other people do as well. So if people get so upset that they leave, then so be it. But I believe very strongly that there are going to be many, many people who stay and like it. And if there are people who stay and like it, then that makes a great game.
And at the end of the day, when you actually look at how a game is functioning, if it has understandable, logical reasons for using for escalation paths, for certain things to occur within certain set parameters, like, being able to tackle something and kill it before the reaction force is able to get there, or before the reaction force is even, for example, notified that there's something caught, that sort of stuff, then people will play EVE Online. You don't have to be, like, say, a developer that caters on, whether people like a change or don't like a change, because at the end of the day, when you change something in a game that a lot of people have a lot of investment in, regardless of what you change, there are going to be people who like it and people who hate it.
All right, but we're basically saying tough it out. If you quit, you quit. We're going to still play this game, so you can't threaten us by quitting. But shouldn't development be a little more, some carrots with the sticks?
Well, this is a carrot. I like this change. This is good stuff. I like the game better today than I did yesterday.
I agree with Fonsui in that, like, these changes in a vacuum, I think, are good. Like, I'm excited by them. But at the same time, I can see how people would not be excited by them. And the people that aren't excited by them, this is like the third hit in the face that they've taken in a row. Like, full on, and there hasn't been a pat on the head or a carrot anywhere in sight. It's like, hey, you should line up, and we're gonna hit you in the face a fourth time in like 2 weeks.
Well, there is. I mean,
thank you, sir. May I have another?
Now I won't get bumped by a. You won't have the supers being like, "Well, no, I'm taking all the hate." Right? They'll have to scoop down to the rest of us.
And this is the first of what we're going to presume is more than one dev blog coming out for Eclipse. We had the trailer. We've had a series of interviews. CCP made the rounds, Push to Talk, Meta Show, Talking Stations. And the message is we're going to start getting dev blogs of what actually is going to happen in Eclipse. And this is our first one.
Yeah, so well, this is
we know there's going to be more.
This is also FanFest time. So what you're seeing is a lot of stuff that would have come out at FanFest is going to probably trickle out, or has come out or will come out in the next, around this time, next 2 weeks, I would assume.
I want to mention, too, that there's another dev blog coming this week. At least intended. If it might not, but it's intended on the schedule for another one to come out this week. I don't know anything about what it says.
Is it, we do know there's a technology blog that's going to come out because we were told that by Goodfellow on the show. They're going to upgrade some of the back-end technology. I don't know if you're thinking of something else, Carneros.
No, I'm just thinking the fact that that on the Meta Show they said dev blogs this week, and we can't talk about certain things until those come out. And they were very clearly plural.
All right, cool. Well, I'm concerned about like your group, Carneros. Do you think they're concerned about these changes?
We're all gonna go play Animal Crossing. That was a joke. Totally a joke.
Right.
All right, don't sleep on Animal Crossing, guys. It's a great game.
No, but yeah. No, this is a big blog with a lot of changes that needs to be sort of digested. And it's probably not all by itself. And it's a little too early to freak out, I think.
I don't so there's a lot of people saying that, adapt or die is bad. New players are being turned away. The game is too hard. But I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw Hilmar get up on stage and say, "I'm about to make EVE a lot scarier."
I think
ago, and this keeps happening.
Those new player concerns strike me when I hear them. They strike me as like a human shields, where you grab somebody and put them in front of you, say, "Look, you're going to kill this guy." What they really mean is, "You're going to kill me."
Where do people feel the changes are affecting new players?
I have no idea. I've been trying to ask this one guy in chat who's like pretty adamant about it, and he can't really come up with anything.
Players, you mean?
Maybe the Blaster Catalyst code is gonna gank some more mining skips and bump them with greater ease. I don't see why this is going to affect new players that much. If anything, it's easier because you could just tell the new players, get into an NEO, put Void on, and then just hit approach. It's going to be even easier for them to do tons of damage.
Ganking ships did get a pretty good buff, right? Like Thrashers do a lot more damage now. We were hearing from, I think Cable said it earlier.
Yeah, if they use T2 weapon systems, yeah.
All right. Any other discussion to be had? You guys want to keep going? Okay, then.
We had to go, Bill.
All right.
I was going to ask one thing. See it for the CSM has with these new mineral changes and just the way they're going to distribute things around. Are they thinking about maybe allowing for, I don't know, say tritanium compression of some sort? Because now you're going to have to trade these monstrous amounts of minerals and move them, and that's going to be quite a feat.
The TIS crew here had Rattati on this weekend, and he talked a little bit about it. I encourage you to go watch the VOD. It's on Talking in Stations. Their videos last week, also on their YouTube channel. Don't forget to click. Just
doing a lot of work for us
right now.
You're hired.
As for people who are talking about getting into carriers instead of supers for ratting, all I can say is nobody saves carriers, and they're free loot, free kills. They're extra money for our drugs as a small gang player. So if they want to get into a carrier and go ratting, be my guest. It's just going to be more for my drug supply.
Yeah, so Array Eve just linked the YouTube video for the Rattati interview. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit up in the comments if you got any feedback, follow-up, etc. that you think they should.
In exchange, we will only refer to test as test lines.
That's right. New rule.
Correct.
New rule.
I did have this one idea that hopefully we can end on and people can just not talk about too much. But when I was on the CSM, there was always this idea that, hey, logistics are really annoying. Supers are really annoying because at the time that they were, and they were actually even more annoying than they are now, if you can imagine it. And my solution was to reduce, and this might be the dumbest thing ever, so we should probably close on it so no one can call me out on it. But my solution was to reduce fleet sizes from 256 to 100. So, there you go. How is that for a solution to the problem of capital movement, too many logistics, et cetera, and stuff like that? I think it's got so many upsides. So you guys can just can argue with me in the shower when you take a shower later today or tomorrow.
I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. It certainly would change the dynamics a little bit. I don't know if I'd go like 100, maybe like 120. What's half a 256? 123.
125.
Or maybe 150. I don't know. It'd be interesting ways to do it. It's not a terrible idea. It's just like how it's executed and such.
Well, how are the initiative going to be able to run their 150 Raven whelps if the fleet size is halved to 128?
Yes.
So I see a lot of people, and this is the only thing I want to say after this, right? To defend my terrible idea. People say, just make new fleets. Yeah, duh. Obviously, you just make new fleets. But when you hit broadcast in those fleets, it's not going to show up in the other fleet. And you're going to need another person to make those fleets, right? So the idea is you create more like lower level FCs who then grow up to become better level FCs, and you promote more coordination, right? So instead of just hitting broadcast button and other guy hits lock broadcast fire, you're going to have to say, oh, I have to find this guy in the list now, blah, blah, blah. So that's the idea.
You end up having
coordinating between multiple fleets is definitely not as easy as people think it is.
Yeah, it's super hard.
Well, Elise, that's a good thing to end on. I last Sunday ended on, why don't we reduce people to one account, one character per person? So I got you beat.
No, I'm not down with that. I want people to experiment and do so. Okay, there's 523,264,000 skill points that are trainable by a single character with publicly accessible skills right now. It would take about 22 and a half years at maximum training rate to train that. That is thoroughly impractical and not the idea and not the purpose.
I love how you say that's thoroughly impractical as I'm like on like 350 million SP or whatever. And like,
I didn't say,
out of skill.
whoa, I said impractical, not impossible. So that's fine. Very, very few players will achieve something like that. I know Iron Bank went and injected it and you're close to it, etc. But we are not, the game wasn't designed for you to train everything. The game was designed for you to have multiple characters and multiple accounts. You specialize this character into this and that character into that, and you farm up a bunch of ISK, and you go to the character bazaar, and then you buy a character that can do the other thing. And every little thing that you want to do, you choose: do I put this on an existing character? Do I put this on another character on the same account? Do I put this on a character on another account so I can do it at the same time? There's so much you can do. The one account / one character per person is not. I don't think that was ever what EVE was designed to be. Plus, the more accounts we have, the more money CCP makes, and we want them to make money. So, let's do that.
I think if you were to restrict,
you're being controversial.
I think if you were to restrict one person per,
I'm going to keep.
If you were to restrict one person per account, you're going to make some PvPers very upset. My CEO included, who very commonly loses his backpack Bifrost. He genuinely needs that. He'll be crippled unless he gets his links all the time.
I like that.
So, Matterall, you bring up some controversial topics. You brought up single character today. I think you mentioned gold ammo on Sunday.
We don't talk about gold ammo.
We don't talk about it.
I got a follow up to golden ammo. So let's talk about it. Talking in Stations Discord. Feel free to jump in. We will be here most of the day. Come in and discuss things with us. Look, if you want to lurk. If you want to chat. And
so if we jump in, should we refit to the nuke before we egress?
What's that?
I think you dropped out there.
Oh, all right, yeah. Sorry, I was. I guess I was hearing something. Come into Talking Stations Discord, and I forgot what I was saying. I got distracted. But
don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh yeah. So thanks, Billy. I need your discipline. Make sure that if you listen to Talking in Stations that you do upvote it or subscribe to it or follow it or whatever, just so that we can see that more people are interested and you can get alerts and stuff like that. But come into the Discord, hang out with us. We're going to go ahead and raid somebody now, probably Torvald. And yeah, I think that's it for today, right? Anything else? Oh, I know what it was. Make sure that you consider what Elise dropped there at the end, which was reduced fleet sizes to 100 and make it a little more difficult for large fleets to form. Interesting suggestion. All right, guys, thanks very much. Stay tuned for a raid.